have a little bit of an issue. As you can hear in the video, I have one cylinder that's not wanting to fire. You give it choke and it starts to clear up, and then the one cylinder that was firing starts to run rich. So if you pulse the choke quick, it'll bounce out for a quick second, then it goes back to misfiring on a cylinder. Now this is a 20 horsepower, so the carburetor is actually easy to get off of this. I'm going to start by getting the hood off so it's easy to get in here. So on this one, because I have the stack, I have to undo this bolt here, one screw there, one screw over here, and then unplug the lights. And then I'll take the hood off, and I'll show you get the carburetor off. Got the hood off. Take the air filter off. These aren't too complicated. Just make sure if there's any dirt on here, you don't drop it in the intake. Then we have 5 10mm on top. Then we all a few of them on the carburetor. So let me get these off and I'll turn you back on. These three are all the same, a little bit longer but the same length. There's no oddball lengths, and then these two are shorter. Put that there, and then we have a vent tube right here you have to unhook. I already pulled that one off. And there is a gasket. This one's stuck to the air filter cover. Trying to lose that one. And I'll set this stuff on the side. I'll put all the bolts right there. I'll grab these and set these to the side so they won't get stepped on. Now I'm going to need to unhook the fuel line from the fuel pump. Make sure your engine's not hot. Now, there's one bolt here in the front, and there's one bolt here in the center, and then 2 more bolts in the back, right here and right there, and they're all 10 mil. And be careful not to drop this bolt in that hole or this bolt in that hole. This one can't really go anywhere unless you have the rubber piece off, but just trying to lose any of them. And then this long one is going to be the last one to come out. We'll take this all out in one assembly. So I need 2 hands so I don't lose any of those bolts. Okay, the bolts are all undone off the carburetor. We've got a choke linkage. Let me turn this down a little bit dimmer. Got a choke linkage there. Gotta be careful we don't drop that down into the top of the engine. Then we have a throttle linkage clip right there. So we have to unhook the choke first, and then we can unhook the throttle. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong on that, but I'm gonna try and do this with one hand. We'll see how it goes. But that clip pulls up, and then the rod will slide out. But you gotta be careful not to drop that plastic clip also. That's like what you find on Kohler V-twin engines for their governor linkages. So let me see if I can get that off. It should lift up. I should be able to turn this. Get that off. Get this out to the side. I know it's hard to see, but I'm doing it one-handed. There we go, now it's unclipped. We can slide that rod out. Be careful not to drop that. And then this carburetor will lift right out. Now, when we go to put this back together, sorry, we're gonna have to try and line up these gaskets in this plate. I'm gonna put that back to on. Matter of fact, now I'm thinking about it, I wonder if I could put a dowel pin. Yeah, I think I can put dowel pins in these 2 holes to keep these plates from moving around. I think I'm going to do that. Because it's a pain getting these 3 holes to line up just right. So that'll work. And the rod can just sit in here, and that shouldn't go anywhere. But yeah, this is the hole. You got to be careful, because it could bounce right down into the magnets, and then you got to tear the whole engine apart if you drop something in there. So, get the carburetor on the bench and try and get it cleaned out. These ones aren't too difficult to work on. So I also have a drill bit set here. I'm going to drill out the high speeds a little bit. because it was a little bit lean even before it started acting up. Right now I think it's the low speed circuit that's plugged up, but let's get on the workbench and go from there. Now some carbs have plastic caps on here, but I broke mine apart and I filed a flathead slot into them. So these are the low speed adjustments. So what I like to do is thread them in by hand and count how many turns they are, and then take them all the way out. I'm going to do it off camera because they're a little tricky to get in there because they're kind of tight. So. And you have to be very careful because these are very small needles. You put a big screwdriver on these and you bottom them out, you'll snap the tips off and then ruin your carburetor. So that's why I like to do this by hand. So now on mine, I was over 2.5 turns out on either side. I'm also going to be careful trying not to mix up the jets from one side or the other, which is a bit excessive for the size of the needle. So they should only be about 1.5 to 2 turns. When I'm getting over 2.5, that's too far out to really meter the fuel correctly. I mean, I guess, because you get 3 turns out, then you're just running almost the full size of the jet. So it's another reason I'm going to drill these jets out one size, and make sure you get a good tight fitting screwdriver on these. Now this is sealed with a rubber O-ring, so this doesn't have to be super tight, but if you have to, you might have to, well, I would recommend using an impact driver on these if they don't come out easy, because it could be slightly corroded in. And this one I know I'm going to have to clean because it's probably going to have some corrosion in it. I'll take a look at it once we get it off. And this is the actual float bowl, and this is the overflow in case you're wondering. So if you uncap this, you can put a hose on here so your overflow has a place to go instead of into the engine. It can actually go out and drain on the ground, but that's just capped off on this one. That's how I got it. So let me just pop these 4 screws out and then I'll turn you guys back on. Okay, this one, the float's going to stay on the carburetor. There's nothing really in here except for your jets. If I look here, I can probably figure out which one's the low speed and the high speed. Here's the low speed jet. So if you follow this channel, you have a port here where all the low speed holes are drilled in by the throttle plate, and this is where your low speed screw is at. And if you follow this channel, it comes to the outside. So your low speed is being fed right here on the outside hole. So that means these outside jets of this bowl are your low speed jets. And then these are the emulsion tubes that go up into the carburetor, into the throttle bores, Venturi bores. So my high speed jets are going to be in the bottom of those holes. I'm not exactly sure how the fuel feeds into them, but it's basically going to be gravity fed. Wherever the fuel level is in here, it's going to feed into these ports. So I'm not too concerned with the hole on the bottom. And obviously just check your float, make sure your float's level with the body of the carburetor. Let me see if I can get that focused in a little bit better. You can see the float's not sitting too high or too low. Make sure it bounces up and down properly and doesn't bind up anywhere. Kind of hard to do with holding the camera, but there's free movement there. And this one has a press-in pin. I imagine the pin will come out one direction. I think that head on this side is bigger than the other, so you have to pop it this side out and then that side in to get that apart. But I don't need to take that apart because there's nothing wrong with the Neyland seat. And if we look in here, you'll see this white chalk on the O-ring. We're gonna have to get that all off of there. Not too bad though, and that's above the fuel line, so that's just from vapors causing that, some condensation, which is normal. As long as the bottom's not corroded, we can fix this. clean it out. I'm hoping I can pop this O-ring out without having to force it, because I don't want to go hurting it in any way. Because I don't want to have to buy a replacement. Yeah, it's coming out nice and easy. You don't want to pull on it, because that'll tear it. I can just poke at it. Yep, coming right off nice and easy. And because I'm running non-ethanol fuel, this isn't swelling up. Well, I shouldn't say non-ethanol. I'm running a race fuel instead of gasoline. So this isn't swelling up like it would if it was pump gas. We gotta clean all that weight off of that before we put it back together, and clean out these channels as well. There's some corrosion in here we gotta clean off. We don't need to worry about these emulsion tubes, they can stay put. Mainly just need to blow that out. And I'm going to put compressed air in through where these low speed screws were at. I'm going to blow compressed air in through here first. Then I can blow it in through the mains. And then here's the low speeds out here again. Make sure you get these holes. Blow those out. And then I'm also going to go in through the throttle bore. And let me get my light. Now if you look down in here, there's a series of holes. Let me see if I can't zoom it in. Here's the throttle plate right there. We're going to open up that throttle plate, and that exposes all these low speed jet holes down here. There's one there, and then there's 4 more in the back. We need to blow compressed air back through all of those holes. So if there's any junk sitting on top, it'll come out right here and out where the screws went in. Then I'm going to pop these jets out one at a time and go a size up. I have, I don't know what size these are. 1x6 by 0.1. Yeah, whatever. That's the part number and or model number. If I can't get this thing open, it's gonna make a liar out of me. There we go. I have a lot of different size drill bits in here, going all the way down to 1mm. And this is a small screwdriver, so I should be able to see which one just starts to not fit, and then just go size up. That's only because I'm running 110 octane. If you're running pump gas, you'd probably have to just do the low speed. The high speed would probably be fine. But I'm going to go a size up on both of them. So I'm going to do that off camera, so hang on. Okay, I got all the corrosion cleaned out of this little seal retain slot. What I did is I used a screwdriver and just scratched all the corrosion off of it. Takes a little while, but as you can see, it is nice and clean. And I blew all the corrosion off of it, and I blew all the jets out. As for the O-ring, usually if you just rub your finger over it carefully, you can usually knock that dust off of it without too much trouble. You might need to wet it with some carb cleaner or ether to get it to come off, but this one wasn't too bad. So I can put this all back together. And I already cleaned out the jets. I actually found out the low speed jets actually had some dust in them. That was probably causing the issue, because they have the smallest ports, these outside jets here. So I got that cleaned off. I'm going to put it back together, and we'll start putting it back on the engine and see if it runs any better. Okay, here's the original carburetor off that 20 horsepower. I didn't want to use this one because it had this electric shutoff valve on it, and I believe it was already cut off when I got it. Oh. So all the guts that would have been in there that would have closed off that valve are missing. So I didn't really want to mess with this carburetor, and I found the other one cheap on, I think it was Marketplace or eBay or something like that. I think I got the other carburetor for like 20 bucks, new old stock. I can at least show you how this one comes apart. There's a gasket for that, and then there's gaskets for these caps that give you access to the high speed. So try not to lose any of these gaskets that are in here. Or drop it on the floor. And if you look in there, there's your... if I can get a light in there just right. You can see your high-speed jets in there. And then the one in the middle is your main fuel inlet. So what the idea of this valve was, it had a needle in it originally. When you'd shut the key off, it would turn the solenoid off, and then the valve would close the fuel, so it wouldn't load the engine up with fuel after you shut it off. And you can also see those little tiny holes in here a little bit better, if I can get a light in there. Still a series of holes right where that throttle plate closes on the inside for the low speed. Screws are in a little bit different spot on this one. Still has that same overflow setup. I already took the screws out off camera. It should come off. This one I think has a tight fit. Give me a second, I'm gonna need two hands. Very similar setup. Oh, it's not want to focus all of a sudden. Come on. There we go. Very similar setup, only this one has a little bit bigger fuel bowl in it. And the high speeds are on the side instead of in the middle here. But the low speeds are still on the outside. We still have the similar O-ring. And the float sits on the same way. This one's pretty clean. So that's what you'll see on the older ones, and I'll bet you, if I get you in there close enough, you'll see how that pin is knurled, so it only comes out on this side, so that side gets pushed in, and then this side comes out to get that float pin out that way. So yeah, there's a similar setup, and then another thing to keep in mind is there's some little brass jets here. And over here you want to keep blown out. That's your vent. So you'll take, just like the other carburetor, you'll take these screws out, blow air in through there first, and then in through these low speed holes, which are on the top on this one. I think they're on the bottom of the other one, but no, I think I had it upside down, sorry. But yeah, there's the holes in there you want to blow compressed air through. And then you want to blow compressed air in through the emulsion tubes and then back out through these holes. And then you can run a wire through these jets. I'm going to go grab a torch tip cleaner and show you. Hang on. So this is a torch tip cleaner. It's got a bunch of different gauge size wires. I think there's a diagram back here of all the different sizes, but you find one that fits in there snug. You run that through the jet to clear it out. It's also easier if you take the jet out to actually clean it. But if they don't come out easy, I would leave them be because you don't want to ruin them. And if they don't come out easy, you can always put it in a vise and heat it up with a torch. And usually, if you'll hear them start to click a little bit when they, or tick a little bit when they come loose. If you get them good and hot, try not to melt them, obviously. But if you get it hot, usually you can pop those jets out a lot easier. So there's your little pro tip on that. So at least now you see how that comes apart. Very similar, just has the extra caps and then the high speeds on the side instead of in the center. So same thing, you find another wire that fits the high speed, and then you can blow that air out with compressed air. All these holes you can blow out with compressed air. So just thought I'd show you that quick. So two different type of carburetors and how they come apart. Okay, I got it all back together, and just a little tip, make sure you clean your fuel lines, and if you have it, a fuel pump out, because if there's sediment in your fuel bowl, there'll probably be sediment in your fuel pump and your fuel lines as well. So I'm going to blow those out on this as before I go to put fuel through it. So let me get this onto the tractor. And I also have to change out the fuel pump. I want to change out the cheap Chinese pump with the OEM Mankuni pump. I have a Makuni right there. I want to get rid of this China one because I'm worried that one is getting old and might get ready to pop. And to help make the assembly a little bit easier, over here I took some roll pins, dropping in these holes. They're not open in the manifold. They're blind. And then that's going to hold my gasket piece in place so it doesn't rattle around as bad. Now that can't move anywhere. That's going to kind of hold it in place. If I had, if I wanted to spend the time, I could get some studs, actually thread the studs in there, and then they would be there indefinitely, but those pins aren't going to go anywhere. If you wanted to, if you're worried about safety, you could probably put some sealant on it, which is a gas resistant kind of a plastic, and then those pins wouldn't come out and wind up going down your engine. But I don't have any worries about that. I'll just keep that in mind whenever working on it. Don't drop those in the intake. One of these days I'd like to bore this out, like do some porting and polishing on it, but a lot of rules specify you're not allowed to port and polish the manifold. You can port match stuff, but that's about it. Now, I can port match the plenum. That's not a big deal because that's not the manifold. Because technically this is an extra piece for a horizontal shaft that verticals won't even have. So more or less an adapter than it is a manifold. So I'm going to get this fuel pump now while it's right here. I'm going to do that off camera. Okay, I already put the throttle linkage on. The carburetor is just sitting there. I need two hands to really clip that in properly. I tried doing it with one hand and couldn't, but I can show you the choke linkage anyway. Just gotta get that started in the hole. Just like that. I gotta move this over a little bit. We'll make sure our gasket's still in place in there. Kind of center it up a little bit. I can grab the longer bolt here, put that right down into the center, and kind of wiggle it around until you get it in there just right. Oops, sorry. I can see when the gasket lines up with that hole. And then it kind of dropped in. So we'll kind of run that down till it just touches the body of the carb, or plenum piece, whichever. And I gotta put another bolt here on the end to kind of line everything up. That has a washer on it. Gonna keep everything kind of square. Now this has a slot going left or right, so what I like to do is just feel the front of this and see if it's lined up or not with the manifold. When everything's all square, I'll cinch it down. Right there, everything feels square. Got two other small bolts right here. Careful not to drop them. And this gets plugged in over here into the fuel pump. Pull that back into place. I gotta put my choke cable in. I didn't show that earlier, but that's kind of pretty simple and straightforward. So I'm gonna get that all cinched down and we'll continue on. Okay, it's all back together enough. We'll put the air filter on after. We have to get this thing warmed up and tuned up, and we're going to make sure both cylinders are firing, and we're going to kind of fine tune it by unplugging one cylinder and comparing one cylinder with the other as for tuning. This one has an electric fuel pump, so I can just turn the PTO power on, which turns the fuel pump on. I'll prime up the carburetor. Give it a little choke. Okay, I'm going to have to turn the idle up a little bit from what I had it. Try tuning it at the idle where it's at now, and when you go to open a throttle it would stumble and stall. So I'm going to turn the idle up a hair just to get the vacuum pressure up in the manifold, and we're going to run that needle comparison quick, so give me a second. Just unplug this one cylinder. It's got heat in it. It's not super hot, but it's got enough heat in it to tune it. So I'm going to leave this one plugged in and this one unplugged. And I know leaving it unplugged like that and running it could damage the coil, but I have tons of extra coils and they're not expensive anyway, so just going to leave it unhooked. And there's no fuel on top of the engine to catch on fire either. So let's see if this will start back up again. Come on. Oh, got a little choke. Come on. Full throttle. And then kind of turn it in until it slows down, then back out until it slows down. That one right there where it's rich. Then we'll put this one back on, the other one back off. Gotta give it a little throttle. Probably a hair bit of choke. Okay, we'll plug that back in and turn the idle down a hair. We don't need that extra idle anymore. we're good. We'll put the air filter on now. Okay, there's a rubber tube right here, and then there's a hole that's got to go into on the bottom of the air filter. I have to make sure I get that in before I go bolting this down. I need 2 hands to get that in there just right, so I'll do that off camera, sorry. I'm going to cinch these down. Make sure you get these things good and tight, because you don't want these bolts coming loose and going down the intake and ruining an engine. Now these longer ones might not come out, but these 2 shorter ones could. Almost half tempted to leave them out because I don't think I'd really need them. But they were there, I'll keep them there. Make sure they're all tight. And we'll put the air filter back on. And then we'll put the hood back on. And we'll go have some fun with it. I gotta move a trailer. Sorry if I'm boring you with this. Some of you might find it interesting or informative. Get this nice and tight. Make sure that's all the way down. I gotta put the hood on off camera and I'll turn you guys back on. Firing on both cylinders good now. It's not stalling or anything. It's not popping out the exhaust. So I'm gonna take the truck down in the garage and put all the stuff away. Okay, we got it hooked up and locked down. Let's go in high gear, how's that? See, it's not a one-trip pony. It does more things. Running good now. Didn't miss a beat. These are the metal ramps that were built for this trailer. I use the wooden ones because they're a little bit longer. But yeah, these are actually made out of old camper trailer frame. The frame was doubled up and welded together. They hook on the back of here, onto that metal lip. So I'll put them back on the front and leave this here and put the tractor away. Just give me a second and I'll get this unhooked. See, we'll start without choke now it's warmed up. Nope. I'm gonna have to park it in here, but I'm not gonna bore you with that. But she's running good. If you like the video, make sure you give me a thumbs up, and as always, thanks for watching. Have a good day. Bye.